topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks for joining in, everybody. I am Kevin Hallinan. Welcome back to another episode of Winning Business Radio on W4CY.com, now Winning Business TV, live streaming on Talk4TV.com, in addition to Facebook and a lot of other outlets. The mission of this show, as regular listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others. You know, to learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and hopefully to be inspired by the successes and failures of others. You know, every successful person that I've ever had a chance to talk with has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So I always say, you hear me every week, while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes, help keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Dennis Volpe, U.S. Navy retired, International Coaching Federation professional certified coach, specializing in performance, personal leadership, and transition coaching, and author of Transition on Purpose. Here's his bio. Dennis achieved his coaching certification to the Columbia University Executive Coaching Program and is also a Gallup certified strengths coach. He helps others make more informed decisions about the work they do and the life they lead, so they're more focused, fulfilled, and resilient. Dennis's understanding of personal leadership comes from his over 20 years of experience as a career naval officer, to include command at sea and a variety of intellectual pursuits. He challenges and empowers can-do leaders to embrace reality, define what they want, and equips them with the insight, perspective, and accountability necessary to find their edge and sharpen it to thrive in new and challenging environments. Dennis is the international best-selling author of Transition on Purpose, which provides a personal story of transition illustrating success, failure, and personal resilience. He teaches how to have a transition on purpose mindset, emphasizing self-awareness, exploration, and action to be your best and to live your best life. Throughout the pages of the book, readers find out how to think differently, behave differently, and do life differently. He's the founder of Severn River Leadership Group, which is a veteran-owned small business committed to the development and success of military veterans, first responders, and elite athlete-owned small businesses through small business investing, performance coaching, and leadership consulting. He's an outdoor enthusiast, a Traeger grill guy, we'll talk about that, a recreational triathlete, and a passionate rugby and lacrosse fan. Dennis and his wife Amanda live in New Hampshire with their dog Nimitz. Dennis, welcome to Winning Business Radio. Thanks for being here.
Kevin, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a while. So super excited for the conversation.
Cool, me too. So first, tell us about Amanda.
Amanda, she's not only my best friend, she's my lighthouse. She's the person that keeps me, going when I don't think I can go anymore.
Yeah.
In terms of, I guess the one word you could say, she's my rock.
I understand that story. And now, equally as important, don't tell her that, Nimitz?
Yeah. So he's my wingman.
Nice.
We've had him for about 8 years now. And spend now, in a post-COVID world or even a COVID world, he and I have spent a lot of time together, because Amanda she's a general manager in the aviation and aerospace industry.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to work every day doing amazing things, and I'm doing the virtual remote coaching and consulting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely need a wingman.
Was she in the military?
Yes.
She was.
She's also a service academy grad.
Hmm.
She did 6 years as a surface warfare officer. So we met in the military. And when it was time to decide whether or not we were both going to stay in the military, um, it was a time where co-location in military service wasn't really a thing.
Hmm.
So after being married for like a year and the Navy saying, hey, we've got an assignment for you on the West Coast, we got an assignment for you on the East Coast. She was like, you know what? I think you like this Navy stuff a little bit more than I do. So you do it. You pursue your dream of being a commanding officer, and I will support you in every way I can.
Wow, that's fantastic. So I always like listeners to get a sense of someone's background because it flavors us into who we are today. So where did you grow up and what were your early interests?
So I'm a simple kid from Long Island. Grew up on Long Island. My father was a former Marine. He was a combat area combat Marine. Spent time in Vietnam, obviously. Did his 4 years, but you would have thought that he retired as a sergeant major of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And then he was a career police officer. So I come from a long line of service-oriented folks. And I say that because, like I said, my father was a Marine. I had an uncle who was a Marine. I had a cousin who was a Marine. My grandfather was a sailor in the Pacific during World War II. My grandfather on the other side was in the Army in Europe. And I had a great uncle who was in the Marine Corps at Guadalcanal for those history majors. Yeah. And, I've got an uncle who's a paramedic. And I had another uncle who was a retired New York City firefighter.
And you considered, if I read correctly, law enforcement for a minute.
I did. And it was something that kind of made sense because, it was what I knew. But when it was time for me to decide whether to stay Navy or to go into federal law enforcement, the federal government made it really easy to decide. One, because they were having a hiring freeze. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't go to where I wanted to go. And then the Navy was nice enough to say, hey, you know what? We've got an opportunity for you because you're already teaching leadership at the Naval Academy. What do you think about getting a graduate degree in leadership development and then teaching for an extra year? I was like, that would be amazing.
That's outstanding. So back up, though. Why the Navy in the first place? What drew you to the Navy? You had all that family background, but why Navy versus one of the other services?
Well, originally I knew that I was always going to go into the service, and I was actually in the delayed entry program for the Marine Corps when I was in high school, because I had a family history of it. But then I was a recruited lacrosse player. And I got recruited to both West Point and Annapolis. And I had a good high school buddy that was at West Point. And so I went and I visited West Point in January.
In New York, on the river.
On the river, yeah. And, West Point in and of itself is a pretty gray place. In January, it's even colder and grayer. Yeah. And I was also getting recruited by the Naval Academy, and I went to the Chesapeake Bay area in April. And
that's almost unfair, right?
Yeah, almost unfair. And interestingly enough, the Naval Academy is pretty gray too, by the way. And it's also pretty gray in January, but I didn't see that. But I knew that I wanted an opportunity to get leadership experience, so I could do other things.
So, as a recruited athlete, was it different than another kid, a non-athlete, let's say, trying to get in? What was the process like? How tough was that?
So it all actually at the service academies, it depends on what sport you play, and then if you're a blue chip athlete or not. you still have to meet all the criteria in terms of academic, physical, and medical stuff. But the opportunity to understand it a little bit better, I think, was what helped me. Because as a recruited athlete, you would go to, a recruit weekend where you can literally see all of those things that maybe other people didn't see who were not necessarily a recruited athlete. And the interesting part of the Naval Academy or any of the service academies is, 85 to 90% of the folks that go to a service academy were varsity athletes in one sport or another.
Because I didn't know that. I can understand it, but I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's, and that's probably one of the biggest, I would say transitions, to use a term, because, you're at your small town high school and you're doing amazing things
on top of the heap.
And, you're this big fish in this little pond. And then you go to a place like West Point or the Air Force Academy or the Naval Academy or the Coast Guard Academy or whatever. And then you're just a fish.
Wow. Sounds like it takes mental toughness, persistence, a lot of those things that high school athletes have. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about life lessons, the life lessons that you can take from an athletic field and apply it in business, in life, you name it, is amazing.
Take us. This will take us to the first break, but take us a bit through your early naval career. You started as a communications training officer, first lieutenant. That was right from the academy?
Yep.
Just give us a brief snippet of each of those roles, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you graduate from the academy, at least back then, you would go to 6 months of school to really understand your trade. And then I was assigned to a anti-submarine strike destroyer and in charge of communications. So everything from ultra high frequency line of sight communication to satellite communication to, battle group information exchange systems and stuff like that. And then I transitioned into a training role. So I was responsible for the organizational training and the personal training for a crew of 350 sailors. And then I transitioned again to being the first lieutenant, which was in charge of the preservation, maintenance, underway replenishment, which we could talk about, and small boats and all that stuff within the command.
All right. So people have a context. How old were you at that point?
I was 24, 25.
Pretty incredible. The training and the wherewithal that someone at that age gets through that process. Then you went back to the academy, though.
I did. I was lucky enough to get asked to go back and get selected to be a leadership instructor. And I got to teach leadership in the morning and got to talk ethics at lunch and got to coach rugby in the afternoons.
That's pretty cool. That's rare, right?
Yeah.
That's
cool.
mean,
and you got paid for it overlooking the Chesapeake Bay.
Wow.
And so it was an amazing opportunity just because you literally had the opportunity to mold the next generation of Navy and Marine Corps officers. And a lot of people ask me, hey, how did you get into coaching? What was the first kind of coaching you ever did?
Yeah.
And I said, on a rugby pitch. And it's funny because the person I talked to about going into coaching, she was in learning and development. She said, you need to go into coaching. I said, oh, I've already been a USA rugby certified coach. I'd love to do that for a living. And then she kind of schooled me and explained to me what performance and transition coaching was all about.
All right, let's pause right there. We're going to take our first break. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with Dennis Volpe, U.S. Navy retired, International Coaching Federation professional certified coach. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmy Star, the king of cool and your host of the Jimmy Star Show, the entertainment radio show for all you cool and unique people looking to get a behind-the-scenes peek at what's going on in the entertainment industry. Listen in as me and my cool crowd of co-hosts bring you celebrity guests, new music, and the good times in fashion, entertainment, and pop culture. Right, everybody? Right! Tune in live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on W4CY.com.
Hey, this is Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestien Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory service is offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
Welcome back with Dennis Volpe, U.S. Navy retired, International Coaching Federation professional certified coach specializing in performance, personal leadership, and transition coaching. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, you got your master's degree during that time back at the academy. Had fun coaching rugby, no doubt. But then you were deployed again.
Yeah, so I left the academy, went to something we called Department Head School because I went to go be a weapons and combat systems officer on a guided missile cruiser. So we deployed down to initially down to the Caribbean. And actually did counter narcotics. So that was an interesting deployment, just because it really opened my eyes to the drug trade and what that looked like, what the Navy's role in it was, what the Coast Guard's role in it was.
I have a friend in the Coast Guard who's told me some of that stuff. It's just,
and
the mission has changed.
It has changed, and I just had dinner with a really good friend on Saturday that we were on deployment together, and we were talking about how if you've actually never seen a 12 metric ton drug seizure at sea, it's pretty impressive. And then we returned from that, did our workups and training to deploy to the Persian Gulf, where we supported the operations in Iraq and the operations in Afghanistan as the air defense commander, and then had the opportunity to go to the Naval Command and Staff College in Newport, Rhode Island, and it's a good time. It's a good time because it allowed me to really kind of relax a little bit, recharge a little bit, reflect a little bit, but also gave me the opportunity to interact with the other services, which I did a little bit during my career, but not a lot. And that's one of the reasons why our war colleges were created, was to give us that joint opportunity. And then I went from there to definitely a joint job. I went to Afghanistan for a year. And I served with the Army there as a joint planner during the 2009-2010 surge in Afghanistan, and that's when I was selected for command.
So just pause on that for a second. Talk about what an operational planner does.
So the biggest thing is taking the commander's intent, whoever the boss is, and breaking it down into those component parts. Say, these are the things, these are the mission essential tasks that have to get done. And in order to be successful, So very similar to what we do in business, right?
That's why I asked, right?
Yeah. And so what does that look like? How have we defined success? What are the KPIs, and how do we get there? And then taking, I like to say, the resources, the tools, and everything at your disposal, and figuring out what the main effort is, what the secondary effort is, and what you have to do to be successful.
That's very relational to business, I mean.
Yeah, no, and and allowed me to kind of develop kind of I like to call it the 6 P's to team effectiveness. And it's, it looks at, well, what's the purpose of your organization? All right. And what about the people? Do you have the right people in the right place, doing the right things the right way? And then what about your priorities? How have you determined those priorities based on the purpose of your organization? And then let's talk about your plan, right? Is it realistic? Is it feasible? Is it achievable? And then perspective. Does everybody in your organization have the same perspective in terms of the purpose, the priorities, and the plan? And then finally, what's your process to identify the good, the bad, and the ugly, and fix, keep the good, fix the bad and get rid of the ugly on a continual basis. So that way you're always performing at your best.
That's outstanding. All right. Then you were on the guided missile frigate duty. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but you were EO and then CO. Talk about those roles. I know there's a lot there, but.
Right. So I like I said, I was selected for command and went to the USS Taylor, FFG 50. And USS Taylor is named after Jesse Jr. Taylor, who I have the utmost respect for the man, even though I never met him, but I've met his family. And the only reason I never met him is because he was awarded the Navy Cross posthumously after he sacrificed his life for his wingman in Vietnam.
Wow.
But he also served in World War II. He also served in Korea, and he served in Vietnam.
Wow.
So being the executive officer and then the commanding officer of his namesake was not only an honor, but a privilege. And so as an executive officer is really like the chief operating officer. So you're in charge of all of the administrative stuff, all the personnel stuff, and you do play a role in the execution of operations. And I did that for 18 months and had really 2, amazing mentors, the commanding officer and the command master chief, who was the senior enlisted sailor on board. And they really provided me, great examples to really understand team effectiveness and how to take things to the next level. And when I was the executive officer, we went and did counter piracy operations off the Horn of Africa. And so we did that for 6 months. And then we came back, and very similar, then you did another training cycle, certification cycle, and then we got ready to deploy again to the Mediterranean, to the Black Sea, and again to the Horn of Africa. And when I was in command.
So, because this is so formative, tell us what happened on February 12th, 2014.
Sure.
And by the way, this is in your book, Transition on Purpose, available on Amazon, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, February 12th, 2014, we were supporting the 2014 Sochi Olympics. We were there providing maritime security, and it was a high-profile mission. As a ship captain, it was, that's kind of where you want to be, right? You're literally on top of the mountain, so much so that you're close enough to the Russian coast that you could see the Olympic torch in the foreground of the Sochi Mountains.
Wow.
close enough that, the Russians weren't too excited that we were there, and close enough that everybody back in the States was interested in what you were doing. And, up to that point in my career, I had an amazing career. Punched all the tickets. Someone even had, my name inscribed on the Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And then we were on station for about a week or so. Then we had to check off station to go get fuel. So we sailed across the Black Sea and entered Samsun, Turkey Harbor. And we had an operational mishap, ran aground. For those people that don't spend a lot of time at sea or on boats, that means the propeller hit the dirt and basically broke it. And during a heightened time, heightened tensions in the Black Sea, we were deemed non-mission capable. So you go as a commanding officer, kind of at the pinnacle of your career, on top of a mountain, personally and professionally. And then you end up in the deepest valley from a personal and professional perspective. Why? Because you knew what it took to be successful. You knew what success looked like. And you knew what was required to be successful. And then for the first time really in your life, you failed.
Wow.
And you had to
that's a very visible failure as well, right?
Oh, yeah. And then you had to figure out how to not be a failure. Because up to that point in your professional career, from the time you were 18 to the time you were 40 years old, all you knew was the military. All you knew was military life. You didn't even know what your personal values were, because your personal values were the organizational values of the military, or at least of the naval service. Honor, courage, and commitment, which absolutely provides you the backbone to make decisions, but not necessarily the personal decisions.
So you left command.
I left command, and then I went, and that started basically a 2-year journey to determine whether or not I was going to be retained or kept in the naval service. Right?
You were approaching 20 years too, right?
Yeah, I was a little over 18 years. And then I went to a fleet command, 4th Fleet, or Naval Forces Southern Command, and I was the director for future operations. I started as the assistant director, and then I was the director. And we were responsible for all maritime activities in Central and South America.
That's Florida?
It's state headquarters for is in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, yeah.
And a lot of people asked me, they're like, well, why did you get out at 20 years? Because you could have stayed for another 8. Well, it was really simple. When you're a commanding officer, all you want to do is be a commanding officer. When you've been the boss, you want to be the boss again.
Sure.
And when you know that you can't be the boss again and do what you truly loved doing, right?
And trained for.
Yeah. But, your why, your sense of purpose is to enable and empower others to be the best version of themselves. Well, you don't quit your why. You just quit your how.
That's really good. That's well said.
And that's why I got into coaching. That's why the coaching I do is based on, is focused on emotional intelligence. It's focused on personal leadership. It's, resilience and team effectiveness. Because I've seen the good of all of that.
Yeah.
And I've seen the not so good of all of that. So,
all right. This is a perfect place to transition. We're right at the bottom of the hour. We're going to come back in just a couple minutes. We're going to learn more about what Dennis does, how he's taken that experience and turned it into his ability to coach and teach others. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show? Well, W4CY Radio makes dreams come true. You can be a radio personality on the #1 ranked internet radio station in West Palm Beach, Florida. We can be heard in 105 countries and all U.S. states. Promote your business, earn up to $10,000 per month and more. It's all up to you. Have fun and be heard. Call 561-506-4031. That's 561-506-4031. Start your radio show now.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, this is Johnny Three Tears from Hollywood Undead, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
I do whatever it takes to make it break through. Anything I'm face to face with, it's true.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We are back again with Dennis Volpe. Dennis, take us through your decision not to leave the military. You sort of did that. How did you get to where you are right now? What you took all that experience, and you're now very instrumental in the lives of others. Talk about how you got here.
Sure, I got here through two random conversations.
Interesting.
And I told you about one. Because and it's funny, those conversations actually started after going through a program called Operation New Uniform, which is sponsored by Sandler Training down in Jacksonville, Florida. And so it provided me the opportunity to really expand my network because, what I didn't do really well during my time in the service was connect with people outside of the walls of the military. So that's what I did. And I had lunch with a good friend of my wife's who was in learning and development. And we talked about what I did and she knew me and what I did, but more importantly, how I did things. And she said, you need to go into coaching. And you already heard what I said. Yeah. And she spent a couple of minutes explaining what coaching really was. And then I reached out to a friend of mine who was a retired Army officer and who had gone through the Columbia coaching program. And we were connected through some volunteer work in a veteran service organization called Team Red, White, and Blue.
I want to ask you about that. Tell us about that too.
So I'll go to the other conversation too, and then I'll talk about Team Red, White, and Blue. The other conversation was somebody asked my wife, hey, what is your husband going to do when he retires? And she responded, he gets energized by this leadership thing. So they said, well, you need to talk to this person because that's what her husband does. So that conversation happened. And then the two of us connected, and he happens to be a partner at the Leadership Research Institute.
Okay.
So I drove from Jacksonville, Florida down to Tampa. We had lunch, told him my story. He's like, yeah, we need to spend some time together. And so I started working with the Leadership Research Institute pretty soon after I retired as an associate. And then after a year, I became a principal. But Team Red, White, and Blue was definitely an organization that helped me through my transition. And it was funny because I was literally introduced to it randomly when I was a leadership instructor at the Naval Academy. And I say that because the women's soccer team, they were allowed to invite their favorite instructor to provide a motivational speech before one of their games.
Cool.
So one of my students said, "Hey, you know what, coach, I know you're a rugby coach. I'd like to, have you come and chat with the women's soccer team before one of our games." It's like, okay, great. So I did. And you fast forward many, many moons. And now I'm at that fleet command.
Mm-hmm.
And I show up for work. And there's a young lieutenant, female lieutenant, who happened to be a soccer player. But she also happened to be the chapter captain for Team Red, White, and Blue in Jacksonville, Florida. So, of course, the introduction was kind of awkward because she said, "Hey, sir, do you remember me?" And I'm like, She's like, "Do you remember the women's soccer locker room?" And I'm like,
Could you be more specific?
Can you be a little bit more specific? But then I had the opportunity to connect with military veterans and members of the community that were committed to the successful transition of military veterans through physical activity. So it was CrossFit, it was 5Ks, it was half marathons, it was triathlons, it was all that stuff. And it really got me into the physical wellness side of resilience.
Yeah. Outstanding. You're still involved in some, I don't know if I'd call them nonprofit, but certainly give back opportunities.
Yeah, matter of fact, I had a board meeting today for the Patriot Resilient Leader Institute up here in New Hampshire. I'm on the board of that, and it's another veteran service organization that's committed to the successful transition of military veterans, but also first responders. And we utilize the outdoors of the lakes region of New Hampshire to provide military veterans, first responders, and their families an opportunity to not only bounce back, but to bounce forward mentally, physically, socially, and spiritually. So that way, not only are they the best version of themselves, but they can give back to their community. That's
outstanding. All right. Tell us about the work that you do now, more specifically. You founded Severn River Leadership Group. You're affiliated with the Leadership Research Institute. Tell us about those organizations.
Sure.
As it relates to what you do.
Yeah, most of the work I do is with the Leadership Research Institute. And, our mission is to transform leaders, to transform the world. And we do that by partnering with organizations and working with their individual leaders and their teams. And we're focused on empowering, enlightening, and equipping them with the tools that they need to succeed. And we do that through one-on-one coaching and team effectiveness consulting.
So does the organization hire you? Does the individual hire you, or sometimes both?
Sometimes both, yep.
Who is a typical client? Typical in air quotes, right?
Yeah, typical in air quotes.
Right.
I've had the opportunity to work with general managers in the aviation industry. I've worked with lawyers who are looking to accelerate their career on the partner track. I've worked with directors in some software development companies. I've had the opportunity to work with emerging leaders in the consulting space, as well as high potential leaders in the financial services industry as part of developing talent programs.
Does geography matter as to where the client is?
No, especially now.
Yeah.
It used to, and it would only matter because of availability, right? Because you would have to travel. But now, based on the realities that COVID has provided, the ability to do things from a leadership perspective and a coaching perspective virtually, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah. Talk about the process. What does the process look like when you work with someone?
So the process is the biggest piece of the process is fit, in my opinion, because I know that I am not the ideal coach for every client, And I also know that every client is not the ideal client for me either. So, for me, I need to understand where my client is, where they want to go, why they want to get there.
Yeah.
And what challenges or obstacles may exist. And if they're willing to be open, if they're willing to be vulnerable, and if they're okay with getting informed insight, if they're okay with getting experienced perspective, unbiased support, but also unfiltered accountability, then I'm your ideal coach, right? Because I'm looking for those can-do leaders that are trying to excel in new and challenging environments, whether that's a small business owner, whether that's a corporate leader, you name it.
What are some of the challenges you help people overcome?
So since I've been in this space for a bit, I've actually identified five big challenges, 5 buckets, I like to call it. And the first one is self-awareness. Very often, people don't take the time to reflect on, what do I want out of this, whatever this is, and why do I want it? And being able to, figure that out provides clarity. So in terms of what's the biggest barrier is a lack of clarity, because that rolls into the second obstacle or the second barrier, which is self-management or self-regulation, both of which fit into emotional intelligence. Setting the right priorities. So that way you can focus your energy, your attention, and your effort on what matters. But you have to define what matters first. And then there's absolutely a lot of confusion between the difference between resilience and perseverance. Perseverance is the ability to keep going, right? To have that mental toughness to keep going despite everything that's going on around you. And that is part of resilience. But there's another part of resilience, which is having the emotional intelligence, the awareness, the situational awareness, social awareness, and everything else to know when your perseverance is no longer providing you positive results. To understand when you need to pivot. I like to, quote a good friend of mine and a colleague, because she talks about, well, when do you need resilience? Well, you need resilience when your grit hits the fan, right? When your perseverance is no longer being productive for you. And then understanding the difference between change and transition. One of the reasons I wrote a book, right? Transition on Purpose, because change is a fact of life. If 2020 and 2021 taught us anything, is that change is constant in our lives. What we do about that change is a choice.
Summarize the book if you could. I know that's a big ask, but summarize the book, and who would be an ideal reader for that book?
Sure. The ideal reader is anyone who is dealing with change, whether that's personal change, whether that's professional change, and who could benefit from increased self-awareness, a greater understanding of who they are, and what matters to them, and then exploring different opportunities, and then taking the time to get into focused action that is based on what you deem as important, your values, your expectations, and your priorities, and building a team of energizers, I like to call it, energizers, mentors, supporters, and those people that are going to challenge you to be better today than you were yesterday, and better tomorrow than you were today. So that way you can get from where you're at to where you want to go. That's what the book's about.
Those are some family, those are some colleagues, friends. Who are those people often? Hired advisors, perhaps?
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. And I always say, because very often people struggle with, because that fifth bucket is asking for support, right? That's one of the barriers. Where do you start? And it's a military term. You start with your QRF, You start with your quick reaction force. Those men and women that you can call any time of the day or night, and you know they're coming. You know they're coming with the support you need, or really the support you want, and the accountability you need.
That's good.
And then you expand to those mentors. You expand to those sponsors. You expand to those trusted colleagues and those experienced professionals. But start at your core. Start at those people that you know, like, and trust and can depend on.
Who do you typically partner with? Who helps you get clients? Who introduces you to folks that might need you?
Very often people like yourself. Prior clients. And I'm also involved in a couple of mastermind groups, which one is a Service Academy Business Mastermind group that looks for opportunities for Service Academy graduates to do work together because of those shared values and those shared expectations. But very often it's by referral.
Can you give us a couple of examples of recent engagements?
Absolutely. I'm working with two brothers right now who are in the property management space. And it's interesting because, one of them came to me and said, listen, I just need somebody who's actually going to give me a stern talking to when I need it.
That's good. Yeah.
And he's like, I know that you're the guy to do that. And, they're doing amazing things. So that's one example. Another example is, an executive general manager in the aviation industry. And they had changed jobs for like about every 18 months for 15 years. And, then they got thrown into, an environment where the team effectiveness was not where it needed to be. But their personal effectiveness wasn't where it needed to be because they were tired mentally, physically, socially, and spiritually.
Wow.
So we spent time focusing on them and re-energizing them so that way they could be more abundant to their team. And once we did that, what were the results? About $100 million turnaround in 6 months during a pandemic.
Wow. That's very measurable. And I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected result, but I would have expected less measurable result.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And the ROI of coaching sometimes is really hard, right? But a lot of people ask me, well, how do you define the ROI of coaching? And I said, it's the ABCs for me. And what are the ABCs? Aha moments, behavior change, and commitments and action.
That's really good. That's really good. Hey, we are sadly out of time. We've got just about 30 seconds. How can people reach out to you? What's the best way to connect to you?
The best way to connect with me is through my website, which is www.dennis-volpe.com or www.lri.com or LinkedIn. I probably spend way too much time on LinkedIn, but that's a really good way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Well, I would encourage you to anybody out there that thinks they might need some help or just like to talk to Dennis, reach out, give him a call. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. And thanks everybody for listening, for watching. This is a show about business and business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Winning Business Radio. Our company is Winning Incorporated. As Dennis mentioned, we're part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. We're not right for everyone, but maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you again, as always, to Roxy, the engineer. Watch or listen again next Monday, December 6th, 4 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do it all over again. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan. Thanks for being here, everybody.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.